The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the city courthouse, spreading soft golden light over the polished wooden benches. It was a busy day. Reporters waited outside with cameras, lawyers moved quickly through the hallways, and the sound of heels echoed on the marble floor. Inside courtroom 7, everyone waited for the hearing to begin. At the front sat Anna Keller, a young prosecutor known for her calm and sharp mind. She was dressed neatly in a gray suit, her files stacked carefully on the desk beside her. Everyone admired her dedication. For weeks, she had been leading a high-profile corruption case that had the city talking. She had faced pressure, insults, and even quiet threats, but she never lost her confidence. The defense team arrived next, whispering among themselves. The judge entered soon after, and the crowd stood respectfully. The hearing began as usual, formal, serious, and focused. Anna spoke clearly, presenting evidence with a calm tone, explaining each document and statement with precision. The courtroom was silent except for her voice. But then, something strange happened. As Anna turned to address the judge, her hands trembled slightly. Her voice, steady just a moment ago, began to waver. A frown crossed her face as she tried to continue reading her notes. She pressed her hand against her chest, blinked twice, and took a slow breath. Everyone assumed she was simply nervous or tired. She had been working late nights after all. Suddenly, her pen dropped from her hand. The next second, her body swayed. Before anyone could react, she collapsed to the floor with a dull thud. The courtroom gasped in shock. "Someone call for help!" a man shouted. Papers scattered everywhere. The judge froze in disbelief while the defense lawyer stepped back. Reporters leaped to their feet, rushing to capture the chaos, but a uniformed guard moved faster than anyone else. Ethan Ward, one of the courthouse security guards, ran forward immediately. He had seen people faint before, but this looked different. Dropping to one knee, he checked her pulse. It was faint, too faint, and her lips had turned pale blue. "She's not breathing right," Ethan said firmly. "Move back, give her space!" He tilted her head gently, checking her airway. Someone brought water, but Ethan raised his hand. "Don't give her anything yet. Call the paramedics." His voice stayed calm, though his heart raced. The crowd moved back as Ethan began first aid. The minutes felt endless until the medical team arrived. They placed Anna on a stretcher and rushed her out, but the entire courtroom was still stunned. The judge declared a recess, but whispers filled the air. What happened? Was it stress? She looked fine a moment ago. Ethan stayed behind, his brow furrowed. He replayed the moment in his head, the slight shake in her hand, the look of confusion before she fell. Something about it didn't seem like a simple fainting spell. He had served in the military years before, trained to notice small details. The blue tint on her lips, the way her body went limp. It reminded him of oxygen loss or poisoning. After the paramedics left, Ethan helped clean up the area. Her papers were scattered all over the floor. As he picked them up, he noticed a half-empty bottle of water rolling near the desk. It looked ordinary, but when he lifted it, he caught a faint chemical smell. Strange, almost metallic. He frowned. "That's odd," he muttered to himself. He placed it carefully inside a small evidence bag from his pocket. Guards always carried a few for security incidents. He didn't tell anyone yet, but his instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. Later that afternoon, Ethan checked with the hospital. The receptionist said Anna was still unconscious but stable. The doctors assumed it was exhaustion, maybe dehydration. Ethan wanted to believe that, but he couldn't. He'd seen dehydration before. It didn't make someone's skin turn blue in seconds. That night, long after the courthouse was empty, Ethan sat alone in the security office. The cameras were still recording from the morning. He decided to check the footage. Maybe he could see if something had happened before the hearing. At 9:12 a.m., Anna entered the courtroom carrying her files in the same water bottle. She greeted the guard at the door with a smile. Then, just minutes before the session started, someone in a dark suit walked up to her and handed her a small brown envelope. She looked surprised but nodded and placed it in her briefcase. Ethan paused the footage. The man's face wasn't clear. He had turned slightly away from the camera, but Ethan noticed a detail. A gold pin on his lapel with an official seal. Only senior officials or special guests were allowed to wear that badge. Something inside Ethan tightened. The envelope, the strange bottle, the timing, it couldn't be a coincidence. The next morning, when the courthouse reopened, People were still talking about Anna's collapse. The newspapers called it a shocking moment in court. The judge had postponed the trial until she recovered. Ethan kept quiet about what he'd seen. He didn't want to start rumors without proof. But when he checked the security room again, he discovered something that made his stomach drop. The footage from that morning was missing. Only a black screen remained between 9:10 and 9:20 a.m. He called his colleague, who swore he hadn't deleted anything. That meant someone else had. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. He didn't believe in accidents, not here. Not when a prosecutor leading a major corruption case suddenly collapsed under mysterious circumstances. He thought about Anna's calm, fearless eyes whenever she walked through the hallway. She had been fighting for justice in a city where corruption ran deep. Now she was fighting for her life, and Ethan, the quiet guard who everyone barely noticed, realized something. He might be the only one willing to find out what really happened. The truth was hiding somewhere in those missing minutes, and he intended to uncover it. The courthouse was quiet the next morning, but the tension lingered in the air like a heavy fog. People whispered in small groups talking about Anna Keller, the young prosecutor who had collapsed in the courtroom. Some expressed sympathy while others speculated about the cause. Most assumed it was exhaustion or stress. Ethan Ward, however, knew better. Something in his instincts told him that Anna's collapse was not an accident. He had spent years in security and the military, trained to notice small details that most people overlooked. And the missing footage combined with the strange water bottle only confirmed his suspicion. He arrived early before most of the courthouse staff and went straight to the security office. He turned on the monitors and began reviewing every available recording from the previous day. The system showed cameras in the hallways, the courtroom entrances, and even in the lobby. Ethan knew he had to be careful. If someone had deliberately erased part of the footage, they might still be watching. Ethan watched as Anna arrived at the courthouse that morning. She moved with her usual confidence, greeting staff politely and carrying her briefcase tightly in her hand. She was unaware of the danger that might be surrounding her. A few minutes later, the man in the dark suit appeared again, just as Ethan had seen before. He handed her a small envelope and she tucked it inside her briefcase. The man lingered for a moment, looking around nervously before leaving quickly. Ethan paused the footage and zoomed in on the envelope. He could not see what was inside, but his mind raced with possibilities. The envelope might contain a note, a warning, or something that could have contributed to Anna's sudden collapse. But who had given it to her and why? He decided to visit the courtroom where the collapse had occurred. The cleaning crew was still tidying up, picking up papers and restoring order. Ethan walked slowly, observing the desk where Anna had been standing. The scattered documents and empty water bottle still lay nearby. He picked up the bottle carefully, inspecting it once again. There was no obvious sign of tampering, but he could still smell a faint metallic odor. He placed the bottle in a secure evidence bag and labeled it. "This may be important later," he muttered to himself. Later that morning, Ethan spoke quietly with a colleague who worked in courthouse administration. "Did you notice anything unusual yesterday?" he asked. The colleague shook his head. "Nothing beyond her collapse. Everyone is shocked. The official report says it was stress and dehydration. Doctors are treating her, and that's all anyone seems to care about." Ethan frowned. That wasn't enough. He knew there was more to the story, and he had to find out what. After his shift ended, Ethan went to a small cafe near the courthouse. He carried his laptop and set it up in a corner booth. His plan was simple. He would check public records, security logs, and anything he could find about the man who had given Anna the envelope. He began by reviewing visitor logs from the day of the collapse. The courthouse had strict rules about who could enter secure areas. Most visitors were recorded along with their ID numbers and the purpose of their visit. Ethan searched for any unusual entries. That was when he noticed it, a name that did not belong in the visitor logs. Someone had entered the restricted area without proper clearance, at exactly the time Anna received the envelope. Ethan's heart raced. This was the break he had been looking for. He cross-referenced the name with the courthouse directory and public records. The man was an assistant to one of the businessmen involved in the corruption case Anna was prosecuting. His presence in the courthouse that morning had no official explanation. Ethan leaned back in his chair, thinking carefully. He had to act slowly. If he revealed too much too soon, Whoever was responsible might cover their tracks. But he couldn't ignore the risk to Anna either. She might still be in danger even in the hospital. That evening, Ethan returned to the security office. He rewatched the footage, focusing on the moments just before Anna collapsed. He noticed something else, a brief flash of movement near the judge's bench. A small vial slipped into Anna's briefcase when she was distracted by the man with the envelope. It was hard to see clearly, but Ethan's trained eyes caught it. The vial was small and he couldn't tell what it contained. But he had seen similar containers before in training exercises and knew that they could hold chemicals capable of causing fainting or dizziness. The realization made his stomach tighten. Someone had deliberately tried to harm Anna. Ethan decided he needed help. He could not investigate this alone. He reached out to a trusted journalist, Clara Reynolds, who had covered the same corruption case. She had a reputation for honesty and persistence, and Ethan knew she would take the matter seriously. When they met in a quiet coffee shop, Ethan explained what he had discovered. He showed her the visitor logs, the footage, and the water bottle. Clara listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. "This is serious," she said quietly. "If what you're saying is true, Anna's collapse was not an accident. Someone wanted to stop her from testifying." Ethan nodded. "I've checked the official report. The doctors think it was stress, but I know better. Something was done to her." Clara leaned closer. "We need proof. We need evidence that shows the vial and the water bottle were used intentionally." Ethan agreed. He knew the task ahead would not be easy. The people involved were powerful, and they would try to hide every trace. But he also knew that Anna's life and the truth depended on him taking action. Over the next few days, Ethan and Clara worked together. They reviewed additional footage, traced the assistant's movements, and collected witness statements. Each piece of information painted a clearer picture. Someone had planned Anna's collapse carefully, choosing the moment when the courtroom was crowded and chaotic. Ethan also visited the hospital quietly, speaking to the nurses on duty during Anna's collapse. They confirmed that she had been unconscious longer than expected, and that her condition was unusual. The metallic smell in her water bottle had not been investigated, and no one had considered foul play. With each discovery, Ethan's determination grew. He knew he was risking a lot by digging deeper. If the wrong people discovered his investigation, he could be in danger too. But he also knew that if he did nothing, Anna's collapse might be blamed on stress forever, and the real criminals would escape justice. One night, as he reviewed the footage again, Ethan noticed something remarkable. The assistant had returned later that day to retrieve the vial. He had moved quickly, avoiding the cameras, and had left no fingerprints. But Ethan had seen him. He had recorded everything in his mind, ready to act if needed. Ethan felt a sense of responsibility settle over him. Anna had been brave, facing corruption and danger without fear. Now it was his turn to act, quietly and carefully, to uncover the truth and protect her from those who wanted to harm her. And so, the investigation began in earnest. While the courthouse continued its normal business and the public believed Anna's collapse was a simple accident, Ethan worked silently in the shadows, connecting pieces, finding clues, and preparing to reveal the truth that no one else dared to see. Ethan sat in the quiet security office, the hum of the computers filling the empty room. The courthouse was closed for the day, but his mind was far from rest. The more he reviewed the footage and visitor logs, the more convinced he became that Anna's collapse was no accident. Someone had planned it, and he had to find out who. He leaned back in his chair and recalled Anna's last words to him before the hearing. She had smiled politely as she passed him in the hallway. "Thank you for always watching out for me," she had said softly. At the time, he had smiled and nodded, thinking it was just her usual politeness. Now he realized she had sensed danger and trusted him. That trust weighed on him heavily. Ethan began by mapping out everyone who had been near Anna on the morning of the collapse. He created a simple chart, listing names, times, and locations. The man in the dark suit who had handed her the envelope was at the top. Then came the assistant who had entered the restricted area. Each name was connected with small notes, movements, interactions, and possible motives. It didn't take long for Ethan to notice a pattern. The assistant and the man with the envelope had both been involved with one of the businessmen Anna was prosecuting. Each had reasons to stop her from testifying. The more Ethan examined the timeline, the clearer it became. Anna's collapse had been carefully orchestrated to prevent her from presenting crucial evidence in court. Ethan knew he needed more than patterns. He needed proof. He decided to revisit the hospital, hoping to gather details from the nurses who had attended Anna immediately after her collapse. He walked quietly through the halls, careful not to draw attention. A nurse remembered him from the day of the collapse. "You're the guard who helped her," she said. "She's stable now, but it was strange. Her pulse was very weak and she had a strange odor on her breath, metallic, almost like chemicals. We didn't think much of it because the doctor assumed exhaustion." Ethan nodded. "Did anyone examine her personal items? Her briefcase, her water bottle?" The nurse shook her head. "No, they thought it was unnecessary. Only the hospital staff checked her vitals. That confirmed Ethan's suspicions. The evidence was being ignored, which meant the people responsible could cover their tracks easily." He thanked the nurse and left, more determined than ever to uncover the truth. Back at his apartment, Ethan spread out the files and footage he had collected. He noticed something he had missed before. The assistant had been in the courthouse multiple times over the past few weeks, always near the areas where Anna worked. Each time he left quietly without drawing attention. Ethan realized this wasn't a one-time attempt. It was a pattern of surveillance, planning, and intimidation. He called Clara, the journalist helping him. "I found something," he said quietly. "The assistant wasn't acting alone. Someone higher up is directing him. We need to find out who." Clara listened carefully. "This is bigger than we thought. We need more evidence, something that clearly shows intent," Ethan agreed. Over the next several days, they worked together, reviewing old footage, checking visitor logs, and interviewing courthouse staff who might have seen something unusual. Each small detail added another layer to the story. Then one evening, Ethan received an anonymous tip via a secure email. It contained a photo of the envelope Anna had received and a note. She should not have been allowed to testify. "Watch the water." Ethan's hands tightened around the paper. This confirmed what he already feared. Someone had deliberately tried to harm Anna. The message was vague, but it left no doubt in his mind that the threat was real and ongoing. The next morning, Ethan returned to the courthouse early. He checked the areas where the assistant and the man with the envelope had been. He noticed something subtle, fingerprints on a railing that didn't belong to courthouse staff. They were small, careful, almost invisible. Ethan photographed them, careful not to touch anything further. Every detail mattered. He then reviewed more footage and noticed another troubling detail. Someone had tampered with the security cameras again. The footage from the days leading up to Anna's collapse showed brief interruptions, blackouts lasting only a few seconds but enough to hide a person entering restricted areas. Ethan realized the saboteur was experienced and knew how to avoid detection. Despite the risk, Ethan pushed forward. He began contacting people who had access to the restricted areas, quietly asking questions without revealing too much. Some remembered seeing the assistant or the man with the envelope, but most said nothing unusual happened. It was clear that fear or loyalty kept people silent. That afternoon, Ethan and Clara met to organize their findings. They created a timeline, showing the envelope exchange, the assistant's entries, the blackout in footage, and Anna's collapse. Each piece of evidence pointed toward a coordinated attempt to stop her from continuing the case. Clara looked at Ethan seriously. "We need to be careful. Whoever did this will try to cover their tracks, but we also need to get this information to someone who can act. Anna's life and career depend on it." Ethan nodded. He thought about Anna lying in the hospital, unconscious but stable, unaware of the danger that still lingered. He remembered her words, the trust she had placed in him. That trust became his motivation. He could not let her down. That night, Ethan reviewed the footage one last time. He paused on a frame showing the assistant slipping a small vial into Anna's briefcase. It was barely visible, but he had seen it. He made a copy of the frame and sent it to Clara securely. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is proof someone tried to harm her. Now we just need to figure out who's behind it." Clara replied, "We will, step by step. We're not done yet." Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhausted but determined. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. The people responsible were powerful, and they would do everything to hide their actions. But he also knew one thing. The truth could not stay hidden forever, and he would be the one to uncover it. As the city slept outside, Ethan's mind was busy. He pictured Anna recovering, returning to the courtroom and continuing her fight for justice. The thought gave him strength. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. And so the quiet human guard, unnoticed by most, became the silent protector and investigator. Step by step, he would follow the trail, connect the hidden patterns, and discover the truth behind Anna's sudden collapse. The days after Anna's collapse had passed quietly for most people, but for Ethan, every moment was tense. He could not ignore the evidence he had collected: the missing footage, the mysterious envelope, the small vial in Anna's briefcase. Someone had deliberately tried to harm her, and he was determined to find out who. Ethan knew he had to move carefully. The people involved were powerful, and a single mistake could put him in danger. He decided to focus on patterns and small clues that others might overlook. Every detail could lead him closer to the truth. He began by reviewing the assistant's movements outside the courthouse. Using public records and camera footage from nearby streets, he traced the assistant's daily routes. Each step seemed ordinary, but Ethan noticed repeated visits to certain buildings near the courthouse and the business offices linked to the corruption case. There was a clear pattern of surveillance. Someone had been watching Anna for weeks, learning her routine and planning their attack carefully. Ethan took notes and cross-checked them with the courthouse visitor logs. He noticed that the assistant often coordinated with the man in the dark suit. The envelope exchange was not random, it was a calculated move. The more Ethan studied, the more he realized that the attack had been prepared well in advance. He shared his findings with Clara. "They're organized," he said quietly. "They have someone watching Anna constantly. They know her schedule, and they planned the collapse to happen when the courtroom was full. It was meant to intimidate her." Clara nodded, her face serious. "We need to find out who is giving the orders." "The assistant is just a small part of the plan," Ethan agreed. He knew that to reach the real culprit, he had to dig deeper. That evening, he returned to the courthouse after hours. He checked the areas where the assistant had been seen repeatedly. The security cameras in those locations had been tampered with at various times. But he noticed a small detail. One camera had a faint scratch near the lens, suggesting someone tried to block its view. Ethan photographed the damage carefully. He realized that whoever had done this was experienced but not perfect. Small mistakes like scratches and missing frames could be used as evidence. He made a note of everything, knowing that patience would reveal the truth. A few days later, Ethan received an anonymous message on his personal phone. It was short and clear. "Stop looking or you will regret it." Ethan's hands tightened around the phone. He recognized the warning for what it was, a direct threat. Someone wanted to scare him into stopping his investigation, but instead of fear, it made him more determined. Anna had trusted him once, and now he had to honor that trust by continuing no matter the risk. He shared the message with Clara. "They know we're looking," he said. "They're trying to intimidate us." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Then we need to act faster. We cannot wait for them to make another move." Over the next few days, Ethan and Clara worked tirelessly. They interviewed courthouse staff who might have seen something unusual. Most said nothing, either out of fear or loyalty, but a few recalled seeing the assistant and the man with the envelope lingering near restricted areas. Their descriptions matched the footage Ethan had already reviewed. Then Ethan discovered something even more alarming. A janitor who worked late at the courthouse mentioned seeing a small, unmarked delivery package left in a hallway near the courtroom. The package had been taken away quickly by someone in a suit. Ethan realized it could have contained another vial or device intended for Anna. The attack might have been part of a larger plan, not just a single incident. He documented the information carefully and sent it to Clara securely. They both knew this was a crucial piece of the puzzle. Whoever was behind Anna's collapse had the resources to plan multiple steps ahead, and Ethan had to stay one step ahead of them. The next morning, Ethan went to the hospital to check on Anna. She was awake now, her eyes alert but tired. Ethan felt a rush of relief. "Anna," he said softly. "How are you feeling?" She smiled weakly. "Better, thanks. I heard about what happened in the courtroom. I don't remember much." "You collapsed," Ethan said. "But it wasn't an accident. Someone tried to harm you." Anna's eyes widened. "What? Who would do that?" "I don't know yet," Ethan admitted. "But I'm working to find out. You're safe for now, but we need to be careful." Anna nodded slowly, understanding the seriousness of the situation. "Thank you," she whispered. "I knew I could trust someone. I'm glad it's you." Ethan left the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose. Anna's recovery was progressing, but he knew the danger was not over. The people responsible would not give up easily, and he had to continue uncovering the truth before anyone else could be harmed. Back at the courthouse, Ethan continued his investigation. He discovered that the assistant had returned to the restricted areas several times after the collapse, perhaps trying to remove or tamper with evidence. Each visit was documented in security logs, and Ethan carefully traced the movements. He realized the assistant's actions were deliberate, part of an ongoing effort to cover the tracks of the real mastermind. One evening, as Ethan reviewed the footage again, he noticed a brief moment that he had missed before. The man in the dark suit had slipped another small envelope to someone outside the courtroom. The camera caught only a quick glimpse, but it suggested that there were more people involved in the plan. The conspiracy was larger than Ethan had imagined. He shared the discovery with Clara. "They're not working alone," he said. "We're looking at a network, people working together to stop Anna." Clara frowned. "Then we need to expose them before they can act again. We have evidence, the footage, the visitor logs, the messages. We can connect the dots and show the truth." Ethan nodded. "Yes, but we have to be careful. If they realize we're close, they might try something else." Despite the danger, Ethan felt a growing confidence. He had seen the pieces, traced the patterns, and understood the plan. The network responsible for Anna's collapse was powerful, but they were not perfect. Small mistakes, overlooked details, and Ethan's careful attention gave him an advantage. As he left the courthouse that night, Ethan thought about Anna and the trust she had placed in him. He felt the weight of responsibility, but it strengthened his resolve. He would uncover the truth no matter how dangerous it was. He would protect Anna, and he would make sure the people behind the attack were brought to justice. The quiet human guard, unnoticed by most, had become a force of determination. Step by step, he was getting closer to the truth, connecting the hidden patterns and preparing to reveal the mastermind behind the attack on Anna Keller. The city was quiet that morning, but inside the courthouse, tension hung like a heavy cloud. Ethan Ward had spent weeks piecing together the puzzle of Anna Keller's collapse, tracing movements, gathering evidence, and uncovering threats. Now he was ready to act. He had finally identified the key person behind the attack, the senior official who had coordinated the plan through the assistant and the man with the envelope. Ethan met Clara Reynolds early at a small cafe. She had arranged a meeting with a trusted investigative team, ready to publish the findings if necessary. They reviewed the compiled evidence one last time: the footage, visitor logs, photographs of tampered security cameras, the metallic traces on the water bottle, and the anonymous warning messages. Every piece connected directly to the official who had tried to prevent Anna from testifying. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We can prove intent. There's no question that this person orchestrated the attack." Clara nodded. "We need to present this carefully. One wrong move and they could cover everything up again." They decided to approach the courthouse administration first, presenting the evidence quietly to the chief investigator. Ethan explained the pattern, pointing out each detail that linked the senior official to Anna's collapse. The investigator listened carefully, occasionally asking questions to clarify the timeline. By the end of the meeting, he agreed that the case should be reopened immediately. Meanwhile, Anna was recovering in the hospital. She had regained her strength and was eager to return to her work. When Ethan visited her, he updated her on the progress. "They've reopened the investigation," he said. "The person responsible will be held accountable." Anna smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude on her face. "I knew you wouldn't give up," she said. "I trust you completely." Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction. It had been difficult and dangerous at times, but Anna's trust had motivated him every step of the way. The investigation progressed quickly. The chief investigator interviewed the assistant and the man in the dark suit. Under careful questioning, both admitted their involvement and provided the names of those who had instructed them. Their statements, combined with the evidence Ethan and Clara had gathered, created a clear chain linking the attack to the senior official. Soon, a warrant was issued. The official was arrested quietly in his office, without alerting the media, to prevent any chance of evidence being destroyed. The news spread later in the day. The person responsible for attempting to harm Anna Keller was in custody, and an internal review would ensure accountability. Ethan and Clara watched the proceedings from a distance. Clara turned to him and said, "Your persistence made this possible. Without your careful observations, none of this would have come to light." Ethan shook his head modestly. "I just did what needed to be done. Anna's life was at risk. That was enough motivation." The courtroom reopened the following week. Anna returned, steady and confident, carrying her briefcase and walking with purpose. The atmosphere was tense, but she faced it calmly. The hearing resumed, with the knowledge that justice had not only prevailed, but that those who tried to prevent it had been exposed. During the session, Ethan observed from his usual post near the entrance. He noticed Anna glancing at him briefly and offering a small nod of acknowledgement. It was a silent gesture of gratitude, a recognition of the role he had played in protecting her. The senior official was present, escorted under strict supervision. He maintained a composed exterior, but Ethan could sense the tension. The courtroom was filled with journalists and staff, all aware that the events of the previous weeks had changed the tone of the proceedings. Anna's testimony was strong. She spoke clearly, presenting evidence with confidence, knowing that her earlier collapse had not stopped her fight for justice. The evidence against the official was irrefutable, reinforced by Ethan's careful documentation and Clara's investigative reporting. After the hearing, Ethan and Clara walked outside the courthouse. The morning sun bathed the streets in light, symbolizing a new beginning. "It feels good to see her back," Clara said, "and to know the truth is finally out." Ethan nodded. "Yes, and it proves something important. Sometimes the quiet ones who watch and notice are the ones who make the biggest difference." Over the following weeks, Anna resumed her work with renewed energy. The case she had been prosecuting continued successfully, and the corrupt network she had been fighting against was exposed further. The city acknowledged her bravery and dedication, but she never forgot the quiet guard who had protected her when no one else did. Ethan continued his duties at the courthouse, returning to his normal routine. To most, he was just another security guard, unnoticed and unremarkable. But now he knew the impact of his actions. His vigilance, patience, and courage had saved a life and ensured that justice was served. One evening, Ethan received a small note slipped under his office door. It was from Anna. "Thank you for everything. I could not have done this without you. You made the truth possible." Ethan smiled quietly, placing the note in his pocket. He did not need public recognition. The satisfaction of knowing he had helped someone, protected the innocent, and uncovered the truth was enough. Life returned to a steady rhythm at the courthouse, but the lessons of the past weeks remained. Ethan continued to observe carefully, notice details, and act with integrity. He had discovered that courage was not only about confronting danger directly, but also about being vigilant. Thoughtful and persistent in the face of challenges, Anna, now fully recovered, continued her work with renewed purpose. Her collapse had been an attempt to stop justice, but it had only strengthened her resolve. She respected Ethan's role in uncovering the truth, and the bond of trust between them remained unbroken. As the sun set over the city, Ethan stood at his post one last time that day, looking out over the streets. He thought of the journey he had been on, from noticing small details, gathering evidence, facing threats, and finally revealing the truth. Justice had prevailed, not by chance, but through careful observation, courage, and determination. And in that quiet, unassuming way, Ethan Ward had become more than a guard. He had become a guardian of truth, a protector of justice, and a reminder that even the unnoticed can make the greatest difference.